and welcome to Just a Shout Scratch, the Exodus. This is a really, really special episode. It's our first ever live podcast. As you can probably tell, it's live because I'm already stumbling over my words. But hey, let's get rolling with it. I'm genuinely excited about this guest who's come on today. So many of you already know her as a midwife, a TikTok sensation under the name of Midwife Millar. And if you're like me, you probably might recognize her from One Born Every Minute. It's the brilliant Lara Bassini. And of course, I'm also here with my amazing co-host, Alicia Wright. So let's get into today's episode. Hi, Lara, and welcome to the show. So before we start, though, I always kick off with our guests with an icebreaker question. So all I need you to do is, can you give me a number between 1 and 200?
From me. I've got to go 13. I was born on the 13th. It's unlucky for some, unlucky for some.
I love 13. That's my favourite number too.
13.
Ooh, 13. Oh, that's a good number. It's going to be right at the beginning, so I'm going to scroll on down. Okay, so your question is, what is your favourite book and why does it resonate home for you?
Favourite book? Oh, you're going to laugh at this, right? Do you know what one of my favourite books is? Veronica Decides to Die. It's brilliant. It's by it's brilliant. Honestly, it sounds so depressing, and the actual preface of the story is because it's about a lady that tries to kill herself. Right, and it starts where she survived whatever she's done. I can't remember how she does it, but she survives the suicide attempt, right? And it's by Paulo Coelho. I don't know if you've ever read his Alchemist book, because that's his number one. But basically, it's all about how, when she decides to take her own life and survives it, how she then goes on to realise everything about why she wants to be alive. It's her fight to then want to be alive, and that actually what possibly never being here again did to her made her come alive and want to live. It's a deep book, but it's really good. It's really good, honestly. It's an easy read as well, but all his books are relatively easy to read, but they're all deep and profound in what they actually are telling you. The Alchemist is his number one, but it is a brilliant book. Veronica Decides to Die.
Right. Now, we always think it's not fair, though, just to kind of give you the icebreaker questions. We always answer it as well. Otherwise, it's a little bit cheeky. For me, it's a bit of a different one. I've got dyslexia, so reading has always been a bit of a kind of a challenge for me. And honestly, I've not really been interested in many books. So the only book that I've kind of really probably read all the way through to the finish was the Harry Potter book, the last one, the Deathly Hallows, right to the end. Only because I got so frustrated because the films had come out, and that's kind of really got me interested in it. And pretty much I couldn't wait for the last film, so it was kind of just me wanting to find out what's happened.
They had like a reason.
Yeah, so otherwise, kind of it's audiobooks for me. But the only problem is that I find that I listen to the Harry Potter ones, which Stephen Fry reads, which is fantastic because he does all the voices and stuff like that. And I've been listening to them for years and years and years. And I listen to them just before I go to bed. But every time I hear his voice now, he puts me to sleep. No matter what no matter what kind of TV show he's on or anything like that, if he's on QI or anything like that, within the first kind of 10 minutes, I'm just going. It's not good.
At least if you ever have insomnia.
Yeah.
I used to do that with Question Time because I loved the guy that used to take Question Time. I can't remember his name, but he was brilliant on that. And
was it Paxman? No.
He was just no, it wasn't Paxman. It was the short guy. He was just,
yes.
You know the guy, and then no offense to Fiona Bruce, but I loved her on the news. I don't love her style on Question Time, but I loved him. And that used to send me to sleep, make me all relaxed when you should be like alert, listen to all these like really interesting, important life topics.
Yeah,
and I was
ready to
there
sleep.
we go.
You know the books that I like? Again, I like reading autobiographies, especially really funny ones. And my favourite one I've ever read was Sharon Osbourne's autobiography. It's hilarious.
Really?
Yeah, really.
I don't know whether I fancy that of hers. No
Really,
offense to Sharon
really
Osbourne,
funny.
but I just, it's good, is it?
Yeah,
I'm
it
quite
makes me want
shocked
to
at
be a
that.
friend. Like I want to hang out with her because it was so funny. I remember reading it on the plane once to go to Tenerife, and I laughed so loud and like laughed out loud, and everyone kept looking at me, but I couldn't help it because I found it genuinely funny.
I wouldn't want to upset her though, not after hearing about what she kind of did with posting dog poo in a Tiffany's box through one of her worst kind of enemies' front door. Yeah, it definitely kind of makes you think twice.
She's on it.
Oh, I didn't know she did that.
Yeah, no, she's on it. If you
That's
cross her,
different.
she's on it.
Yeah, I bet that wasn't in the books, was it?
That wasn't in the book.
So you're here to talk about your amazing journey and the story. That one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was to start things off really is kind of what inspired you to become a midwife.
Do you know what? I think a lot of midwives will say this, so I don't want to be boring, but it's true. It's just been in me since I was like knee high. Like, I've got a book that I did a drawing when I was about 6, and it says I want to be a nurse when I grow up, but the nurse is in like a dress, and then there's just babies and cots all around the nurse. So it's obviously a midwife.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I think the mere fact that women are just treated, I hate to say this because I know that men get it as well, but obviously my thing is empowering women. And I just felt that me, myself as a woman, we're just not treated that well, especially when it comes to pregnancies and having babies. And that is not just by healthcare, that's by the world. It's like, and I just had this strong impetus in me to go out there and empower other women to feel less alone. That was it. It was like, well, I feel this alone. I
Yeah.
feel like I've gaslit myself all my life and like doubted myself all my life. Like, even from, I was talking tonight on my TikTok about 4 weeks pregnant, I felt like shit, sick and everything. And I don't know how many people from midwives to friends went, don't be so ridiculous. You're barely pregnant. You wouldn't feel sick now. You wouldn't feel unwell now. You wouldn't feel tired. That's ridiculous.
Oh.
Oh, if you're going to be like this now, how are you going to be for the rest of the pregnancy? When actually, when you speak to women, most women actually know they're pregnant because they feel shit. And that's how they go, I think I need a test because something's not right, or I'm going to have a really bad period.
Yeah.
But that was the thing that made me think all the time. Part of the hardest bit about being a woman was forever not believing in yourself. And I have to say, I think men, on the whole, I'm not saying everybody, I think that's the one thing they do get right in terms of they do believe in themselves. If they feel unwell, they don't doubt themselves. They're like, I feel unwell. Whereas women will go, well, maybe I don't. Maybe it's just, oh, I'm never very good at this. That's what women do in their heads.
Yeah.
And we do it with everything. Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't
Yeah.
want to ever
Yeah.
make this about putting men down. Do you know what I mean? Because I think when you're like being a midwife and you're empowering women, I get so many men come on my channel and go, I've been in an abusive relationship. Women did it to us too. I get this, I get that. And I get that. But they have to find somebody to fight their corner. And then we're here to fight ours and go, you know, let's make this better for us. Periods, and some women don't even know they're having them. And then, boy, do you hear about that in school. Oh, you're making him out of a Maya. I don't even know I'm having my. Good for you. Good for you that you don't, but some women do. And actually, more women than not do struggle with periods and pregnancies. And we're made to feel then like there's something wrong with us if we're not doing it perfectly. When I think it's hard enough as it is. And if we just told ourselves that actually this is okay and it's normal, we'd feel a hell of a lot better.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is the kind of transition into social media. You know, what inspired you to start sharing with free content on TikTok? And how has this kind of platform influenced your professional journey?
It kind of came from a bit of a selfish place. I'm not going to lie. I've said this all along. I was going through a divorce. Well, my husband had just walked out at the beginning of lockdown. I'd heard lots of things about him, and then he just walked out and disappeared, and it was coming back and forth. It was horrendous. So I was in this toxic relationship because although he'd gone, we were still carrying on the relationship. And that was just horrendous. So that was on its knees, the marriage. You know, my children were growing. And like any woman will tell you, as your children grow, you think it's going to get easier. But it gets easier in lots of ways because you're not there consistently tired, changing nappies. But then all of a sudden, they don't want to do things with you. They want to do their own thing. You don't know how to make them happy. So you're not getting the same pleasure. You're not going, I'm going to go and spend the day at the farm and it's going to be lovely and forget about my woes. All of a sudden, you're like, oh my God, he's nagging 50 quid again to go somewhere. The other one's moaning because he's bored, but everything you suggest. So the kids, it was all rubbish, you know, not rubbish, love my kids, but it wasn't the best time. So then there was the kids, the divorce, and then of course my job, I was going in and consistently feeling like I wasn't achieving. And that wasn't from the women. The women were feeding back and I was getting brilliant feedback and I was getting exact, you know, outcomes. But in terms of earning money, going up the career ladder, feeling like the bosses respected you, my career was on its knees. So in my eyes, everything had gone wrong. And I tried an antidepressant and struggled with it. Just didn't like the side effects, so I stopped it. But of course, you can't stop it and do nothing. You have to do something. So I paid a really expensive trauma guy who's a psychiatrist, amazing guy, he's retired now. Phenomenal guy, who's like the wise father figure that I didn't have. My dad's passed, but my dad wasn't great when he was here. I love him to bits, but he wasn't the wise father figure. All of a sudden, I had this wise Mrs. Doubtfire figure in my life because he was Scottish and he looked like Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
He was Mrs. Doubtfire. He was like, you know, I thought I'm paying out all this money to him basically just to have a granddad or a father that I haven't got, you know. But he helped me believe in myself and also had knowledge of the NHS and its issues, had been in the NHS himself and been a somewhat alternative psychiatrist. So he'd kind of had similar issues. And it was great because all of a sudden somebody was going, I get you. I get you. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And he was the one that said, you could help so many women by doing something online. You know, like I see so many women, Lara, that are desperate for somebody like you. And then I went for EMDR therapy through him. And the woman there was Irish. She was strong. And she was like, you need to get out there and you need to do it. And all of a sudden, I just started doing it. I just thought, you know what? What have I got to lose? I feel like absolute shit. And there's only so long you can go on like that. It's a do or die situation. You either end up dead or you do something about it. And that was when I thought, if I do this, this is why I say it was selfish, because it was giving myself something. It was going, you're not terrible, Lara. You're actually all right. You've actually got a font of knowledge. You are actually, and that's why it was selfish, but it was obviously not selfish in a whole host of ways, because I was saying to women, these are the facts of pregnancy. These are the things you might experience. This is how you can feel. This is what you can access. So I was using my hurt and upset and shit as a woman to help all the other women out there. Because let's face it, we're all experiencing similar things just at different times and in different ways, you know?
Can you remember what your first TikTok that you made? Can you remember what you did?
I can't, but I was absolutely petrified just stood in front of the camera like, there's 5 things you might feel if you're early pregnant. You know, like literally
Just
like
waffling really quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was like, hi, bye, like really nervous. And then I just started dancing and stuff because I felt like on the days where I felt like nervous to speak, I felt like if I danced and I put the stuff over the top, the information was there and it was safe. It was NMC, it was guided, you know, it was the latest research. And it gave women something to look at, but then the information that they needed so that they weren't bored. Because let's face it, we all get bored so easily now, don't we? I mean, you just scroll, don't you? You're like boring, gone.
Yeah, doom scrolling and just can't see
It
it.
made you feel better, but it made so many other women feel better as well. So
I hope so. I hope so, Ellie. I do.
for you, but it's not selfish because you've done it for other people as well.
Yeah, I
You
hope
know,
so. It saved
that's
my
amazing.
life. It saved my life. I don't know where I would have been because I was in really, really dark times. You can cope with one or two things, but every area of my life had gone wrong, including hitting the menopause, losing my periods, gaining loads of weight. All of a sudden, every area of my life was on the floor. And you have to find a way to pick yourself back up.
And you did.
You know,
and
you do.
and you did it for yourself, your children, and
Yeah.
the women, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And you really are making a difference. It's amazing. You know, I mentioned that you were coming on the show, and I said to one of my team members who I work with, Abby, quick shout out. And straight away she was like, I follow on TikTok. She knew all about you. It was one of those things that I kind of thought, wow, that's such a small world. And even my wife, she mentioned that her best friend, Kaz, another shout out, that she follows you on TikTok and stuff and things like that. And it's just amazing how the information stuff that you give, it is making a difference to people. You know, it's reassuring them in ways that, you know, for their anxiety and stuff like that. So it's fantastic.
Exactly. You know, that's really kind of you to say that.
One of my next questions, and I promise I'm going to hand over to Alicia, who's got some brilliant questions as well coming up. My last one really is about kind of the One Born Every Minute series, and how did you become part of it, and how did this kind of shape your perspective on midwifery and patient care?
One Born Every Minute is a show, so they're only showing a very small aspect of midwifery, and that's why it gets heavily judged, because people assume that husbands are on their phones for hours and hours. They assume that women are stuck on these beds, and don't get me wrong, in some instances that does happen, but of course, it's only showing you a very small snippet. And obviously, it's only getting certain women that are agreeing to go on it. So you don't see all the other very varied and wide reality of midwifery. But I absolutely loved it because what it did was all the not so nice staff suddenly had to put fake smiles on. They were always nice. You know, you didn't have to put up. And even though you knew it was false that they were smiling and saying, morning, Lara, it was nice because you just didn't have to put up with the usual people not being not very nice. So I loved it from that thing. It also showed the negative culture from the underbelly of it, because of course, people would try and stop me getting on it. And it was very much, I don't want to say I'm Cinderella because I'm clearly not, but it was very much, it always reminded me of a Cinderella type scenario where you've got these ugly stepsisters that are saying, she's not here, because they didn't want you to be on the show. And then you were gate kept behind a closed door. So there was so much more that went on behind the scenes. They'd say to the team, there's other midwives, you can't just have Lara. She's not around, even though I was around or I was busy, they give me other stuff. They weren't wanting me to be on there. And then, of course, there were lots of the bitchiness at the time, and they actually suspended me for 24 hours, the trust. It came from the midwife on call because the gang of not so nice midwives were gossiping in the staff room, and they said that I'd gone to the Sun behind the trust's back when the Sun article had gone out on the Sunday before the Monday of the and nobody, typical NHS, nobody had filtered down to the staff that this Sun article was going to go out and that it had been sanctioned. And on the Sunday, they couldn't get hold of the director of midwifery, and therefore they phoned me and said that they were going to suspend me because they thought I'd gone to the Sun behind the trust back. I was like, no, it's been sanctioned. And they also felt the article was unprofessional. Now, I had been heavily coached for the article and the comms team had been involved. But the trouble is when you're selling to somebody like the Sun, because they were getting quite a lot of money for these articles, I think in the thousands, like 7,500, something like that. I wasn't getting it. The trust were getting the money. So, of course, they wanted the money and needed the money, in all fairness. But the article would go out, like I'd said, they said, what was one of the most harrowing things you'd experienced? And I said, a woman had come in pregnant with twins and left with no babies. To me, that was one of the most harrowing things I'd seen at that point, because I was quite young and like she'd come in with these two and neither had survived. To me, I was just in absolute shock.
Yeah.
They'd spun it. I don't know how they'd spun it, the Sun, but they'd sold it like a really sort of, it was in more basic language and stuff, and they hadn't given full context to it. And they'd argued that I'd been unprofessional and that the woman would know who it was, and that was, they were just again trying to get me. They didn't like the fact that I was well liked and that One Born Every Minute wanted me. So luckily at that point, obviously the next day, the director came in and said, no, we'd sanctioned it. And at that point, anything that was said, they could go and look through footage. And the director said, I've looked through hours and hours of footage of Lara Bassini, and she's not unprofessional. She's not like you, how you think. And I think the shock was from the staff is they assume that this full of life girl, because you got to remember I was a hell of a lot younger. Like I can't remember my age, but I think I was 28, 29, I was young, full of life, skinny, attractive in their eyes. I couldn't give a shit. I look back and think, yeah, okay, I was more attractive than I thought. But in their eyes, I can see now that that was part of the issue, like the whole thing.
The mean girl culture, isn't it?
Being larger than life and sparkly. And luckily the director said, I've watched the footage, but they thought that the Lara that was in the staff room, loud, cracking jokes, probably unprofessional in terms of cracking jokes, in a staff room.
Absolutely, yeah.
In a staff room, and I was wild in terms of full of life and stuff. I think they thought that's who I was when I went in the room.
That's actually really sad to hear, because obviously One Born Every Minute meant a lot to us. Me and my wife watched it when the first episode came out, and we were about to have our kind of first baby, and I generally thought, oh, great, I'm going to learn a few things here, but quickly realised it was pretty much a bit Disney-fied, and it wasn't, especially when our baby was born. I know this probably sounds like I'm blowing smoke, but honestly, we thought you were one of the best midwives there, to the point where we're kind of thinking, oh, we're hoping this midwife would be ours.
Thanks, Ryan. It makes me want to cry because I've always wanted to be the best. I've always wanted to be. I love Michael Jackson. I know it's controversial, but I do. And Michael Jackson always said, whatever you do in life, whether you're a cleaner, a cook, a bin man, a dancer, be the best one. And I always thought, I just want to be, my aim is to be the best midwife. That is what I wrote everywhere across my room. Lara Bassini is the best midwife. I'm the best midwife in the world. That was my goal. And people can look at that as arrogant and egotistical, but why do you take on a job and not want to be the best?
Absolutely.
Why do you not want to be the best? I want to be the best. I want women to say, I said this years ago on the One Born thing, I want women to say she was amazing. Yeah. Why else would I want a woman to leave the room?
It's so important, isn't it? When people have their babies, it's the most important time of their whole life. I find that women always remember their midwife, always, but it's either for something really good or for something really bad, isn't it? They're either really kind to them. Never
No, it's
ever in
not.
between. But why would you want to not be really, really nice? Why would you not
Yeah.
want to be? Also, it's a profession that's actually really difficult, isn't it, Laura? It's a really, really hard job. And why would you go into it unless you're extremely passionate about it? It's hard, but it's amazing. So unless you're extremely passionate and you want to be amazing, I don't think it's not the job for you. And like you said about the culture of midwives, if you've got those mean midwives who aren't kind to the kind midwives, it's kind of, in my opinion, it's time for them to go, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas they're putting the negativity on you, but really they're just deflecting because it's them that it's time to go for. So it's just, yeah, it's sad. I feel like it's
It
cool.
is. And I think if you're aiming to be the best, the thing I learned quite quickly was I can love vaginal birth. I can love no pain relief. I can love all these things. And that could be something that's really important to me. But being a midwife is actually listening. It's a bit like sales. It's listening to your client. What is it that they want? We know they want a safe woman and a live baby. We know that. We know we want both of you alive. What does that client want? Because it's not what we want. And we might actually go, well, a vaginal birth brings less risk and that. But it might not be what they want. So that was like the biggest learning curve for me, was going, I'm taught, because I was taught in the era of vaginal birth. This is like normal birth is the thing. And like I was obviously super for that. And for myself personally, I always say this, I couldn't bear a cesarean. But that's not my job. My job is literally to give you what you want and make sure that when you've come out of it, you are both safe and well and you've got what you want. It's nothing to do with me, whether you have pain relief or not, or whether you go for an induction or not. It's not my bag. My bag is to give you the information and to give it to you in the most non-biased way that I can, so that you don't feel judged whichever you go for.
But that's rare now. In my opinion, that's rare. That is rare to get a midwife now that has that approach and that feeling. As a midwife myself, I've had 3 babies, and like Laura said,
Probably,
I'm
yeah.
so grateful because I came home with all 3 of my babies, and I am so grateful. I was alive and my babies were alive after each one. But did I have the birth I wanted anytime? No. Was I listened to anytime? No. And that's as a midwife as well. So if you can't, as a midwife, go in and have your ideal labour, how can we expect other women to? So I find now it's much rarer to have midwives like Lara or myself who would, put the woman's choices first. It's we're meant to be with the woman. We facilitate the birth that they want. And like Lara said, we know they want a live baby because that's what you get, don't you?
Yeah, that's the basics,
So what
isn't
do
it?
you want? What do you want for your labour? Oh, as long as I'm alive and my baby's alive, I don't care. But it's because of the lack of education. You give them the information of their choices. This is what's available to you. This is how this can go. What would your ideal scenario be? But they're never given that kind of conversation or time to discuss that. And then if they do, it's coercion, isn't it?
It's defensive. It's defensive practice. And you can see why doctors and midwives are doing it, because we also deserve protection, and there is no protection at present. So if a woman decides you've advocated for her to have the vaginal birth, even though she's being recommended a cesarean, if she changes her mind afterwards when things don't go well, there's no backup for us other than your other staff, and they're not in the room at that point. So really, that is why cameras need installing ASAP, because really, number one, they're great for training, because how do I know whether I gave it non-biased? It'd be really good to listen to it and go, well, actually, I do sound like I'm more in favour of that at that point. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's good for training, but also it's so good for the truth, because everybody needs protecting in that room. Any minute now, midwives are going to be facing, in Nottingham, facing maybe going in to jail for something. And those midwives, they deserve that to be the truth that's listened to. And then, okay, if they've done it, they've done it. There needs to be consequences. But at present, there is no safety for anybody, because we know that women don't get the truth and we know that staff don't get the truth. And everybody deserves the truth when things unravel.
Yeah, absolutely. They deserve the truth. They deserve a choice, and they deserve to make a choice. But I think as midwives, like you said, we kind of, or not necessarily we do, but a lot of midwives will coerce women into making one decision because it's potentially safer on the midwife's part, which it might be, nobody.
And how do those midwives go up the ladder? How do those midwives go up the ladder? By being in with the team. And being in with the team means doing what the doctors and other heads of midwifery are saying. So if the doctors are saying she's a good one because she'll get the patient to do what we want. So if that's the process at present, isn't, it's
But then
not a
they
great
don't like
place
the
to be,
opposite.
is it?
They don't like the opposite. They don't like the midwives who stand up for the women. This is what we need to do. This is what the woman wants. So I'm listening to the woman. We then get told we don't like those midwives, and we get pushed out as easy as they can because
Remember, for me advocating for a woman, which I know we're going to probably come on to later, for me advocating for a woman, I'll never really know whether she had an issue with me, because she obviously didn't want me to leave and everything was fine. She never made a complaint. And obviously the head of midwifery said she had to speak to that woman because of what was said by the staff. But we still don't know whether that woman was upset and said that I talked her out of a cesarean section, even though she'd been declining for a week before she even met me. And yes, okay, I've been exonerated of it and all those things, but it's important moving forward that we are protected, because imagine if she had have had something happen and she was saying that I talked her out of that cesarean, I could be in a very different position now. And that has changed me for life, because I know I didn't. And I know I was helping her advocate for her for what she wanted, but there's nobody else in that room.
You know what there should be? There should be voice picking up in the room, maybe voice recording, not necessarily cameras. I feel like even though the cameras are a great idea, you know there's going to be, they look at it from a privacy point of view, and women not going to.
But they've got them in most A&Es. They've got them on all paramedics. They've got them on all police.
I suppose
And
they
although
want cams, don't they? Like police and.
although
You know,
women, honestly, they're doing it in
paramedics.
America. And although women at present, if you mention it, they'll go, "I want my birth recorded." You speak to any woman with a baby that's injured or not alive. Sorry, my dog's at the door. I'm gonna have to ask my son to get him. I might let, hang on, I'll let, because he'll probably just sit down. You speak to any woman with a baby that's injured or not alive, or you speak to any midwife that's under an allegation, and they are begging for cameras, because they are fighting for answers and saying that midwife said this doctor did that, and they are coming up against untruths. So, or they're saying they're coming up against untruths. But I think it's so important the way it's going. Unfortunately, that is going to be the only way in the long run for safety. And I know America they're developing glasses. So the glasses basically pick up speech, like you're saying, so that you don't write your notes. I don't know how long it's going to take the NHS to get these, but you don't write your notes. The glasses pick it up and it just transcribes it all onto a system. So that's great, because then you don't have to worry about your notes.
More, can't you? You don't have to spend your whole time.
And this is the way it's going for sure. But I just know from my experience, it's all well and good when you haven't experienced something, but once you have 150%, you need the safety of it. And that is why police have got them. And there's been, I think it's something like a 75% reduction in complaints, right? Which suggests that the people that are complaining possibly need to complain. Yeah. And then I think, God, their stats are phenomenal. Basically, there's a 50% reduction in force used. Like literally it's making, and the only data on healthcare stuff is in America, but the complaints have gone down tenfold there as well in terms of hospitals. And it's the way forward.
The better births that we'd have and the better birth rates and our statistics, if that was in, you wouldn't be forcing a woman to have induction. You wouldn't be,
Can you imagine some of these midwives that are vile? Can you imagine them knowing they're being filmed speaking like that? Because I tell you what, on One Born, it stopped.
One Born, absolutely. You said as soon as the camera's there, they were smiling, "Good morning," how you should be.
I know, hi. Yeah, they're not gonna be speaking to you like shit once the cameras are there. And you've got to remember, these women think of cameras and they think of it like somebody there with a thing in your vagina. You don't even know they're there. It's like Big Brother. You don't even know they're there. The footage goes directly to a downloadable source. It's kept safe. It's not accessed unless anybody needs it for anything legal.
How do you manage your responsibilities of being a practicing midwife, educator, and also doing social media? So being a social media influencer as well as all your other roles. How do you manage?
Honestly, I found it really, really easy. Like, I literally knew from doing other things before privately that as long as you're within NMC guidance and you're not speaking on behalf of the trust you're working at, you are not doing anything wrong. Now, understandably, I stepped over the lines of that when I was going through everything I went through. But I got to the stage where I felt like, do you know what? If you want to strike me off, because actually you can't go around raping people and expecting them to not talk about it. Because I think when they stepped over the line, I thought, hang on a minute, this is actually criminal. But when I'm doing my day-to-day stuff, I find it relatively easy, because as long as you're being safe, you're giving guidance, you're not telling women to do anything dangerous, you're not doing anything wrong. And of course, I don't film in my hospitals. I've never filmed within my trusts. So I don't do that. Anything that I've ever put out to do with the London hospital was always sanctioned by them to promote recruitment, things like that, or Independent Day of the Midwife, things like that, International Day of the Midwife. I find that okay and easy. And I actually think I'm adding to women and what they're getting out of midwives, not detracting. Admittedly, I know I stepped over the line when I talked about some of the darker stuff, but I genuinely believe by talking about the darker stuff, the women out there are already aware of this, and they actually probably feel safer because they go, do you know, she's right, and she's openly saying about it. I think the NHS get it wrong because they don't admit it. Sometimes if they went, you're right, that was shit, that shouldn't have happened, women are like, oh my God, they know, they get it. And their stomach feels okay. They think they get it. They're listening to us. They're going to do it. It's when you're gaslighting somebody and trying to tell somebody it isn't what it is. I have to show you this. If you don't think the dog's naughty.
Cute.
Look at him.
What's
Like,
the dog called?
I've asked my son to look after him. This is very. He's called Sonny. He is very good. He's only 9 months, but yeah, it's not great for doing stuff like this because he just wants to be next to me.
It's lovely.
So here we are.
If we're going to work, talk about workplace experiences. So you've spoken about facing challenges with the NHS, including the allegations of bullying. Bullying. We've kind of gone through that. But how have these experiences shaped your advocacy for better workplace culture in midwifery?
Well, that's a massive question, isn't it? Well, let's face it, people are dying because of the culture. And whether that's staff or whether it's women and babies being affected or whether it's people that are just having their lives die off. They might have survived, but have they survived in a state that's conducive with living a happy life, fruitful life? So for me, I think it's massive that it has to stop. And I do genuinely believe the only way it is going to stop is by speaking up about it and people coming out and saying, what can we do about it? And also, I take this from the director at the London Trust because she's phenomenal. She's got a massive thing that she advocates for, which is very much everybody saying no when they see something that's not okay. And actually, even though you think that's okay, that's really bloody hard. And that's especially hard if you're in a place like the other trust that's quite toxic, where actually that means that if you're going to be the one that says, no, you're a problem. So everybody has to be on board with it. And you have to have a director at the top that wants it to be that way and wants it to be transparent and open. And she's a fierce character, the one in London, but not fierce in a nasty, scary way. She's a strong woman and she's a strong midwife. She's massively a midwife over being a director. And I think that is what you need to remember. Why am I a midwife? Am I a midwife to put others down? Am I a midwife to make others feel shit? Am I a midwife to make that other person's day not as good as it could be? The rest of it doesn't matter, but the trouble is people get carried away with ego and wanting to go up the ladder and wanting to earn money. And if the culture's one of that,
how do we
that's
break
the way
that?
they go.
That's the problem. How do we break that?
Because we break it by consequences for those who are found to perpetrate, because then they won't be in the roles.
Yeah.
But that comes with cameras. That comes with cameras.
It comes with cameras.
It comes with cameras and competencies, because the minute you start looking at competencies, it will change the whole dynamic of everything. And again, midwives and nurses and doctors are really petrified of competencies because they're like, well, that's not fair because I've got 50% succession rate because I get these women, right? But what they're missing the point is the competency thing is far bigger than that. It's how many women have come back to say that that person wasn't very nice? How many women have come back with their vaginas sutured that needed help with that because it's not gone well, the suturing? Because let's face it, we're blindly suturing. Do you know how good you are at suturing? Because I don't. I like to think I'm good. I feel like I'm good when I'm doing it and I get a good result aesthetically. But I still don't know to this day how many women have come back saying this unraveled, it came undone, it was too tight. I want to know that because I want to be good at it. And we're not told that. We're not given that information. The competencies are so important because then people will be looked at as good or bad based on their actual capabilities. Then the cameras need to be there for the awkward times when people are saying things, because you can go, well, have a look, because Lara didn't do that. This is the footage for sure. And also for the women, and then ultimately the consequences for those. Like, how can the director of that toxic trust and the head of midwifery still be there when they've done what they did to me? And they know they have done that. And they know that they forwarded me with allegations that don't even make sense. But yet they're still there working. So how can that be?
Works out
And
again.
that's not about me having hatred on them. I want to stress that, because I know that looks like me, bitter and twisted bitch, wants to get back at them. It's not. It's not, because to me now,
it's because it's what you've experienced,
I'm
and then
through
those
that
people are
now.
still allowed to carry on and work.
Yeah.
And it's the same as if you don't have someone at the top that is strong, like the one you're suggesting at your London Trust. Because I mean, I've been a midwife for 13 years now, and then obviously a student 3 years before that. And when I was a student, I remember how mean the midwives were. They were mean, and that was happening all those years ago, and it's a culture. It's not going to change unless something else changes. It was always shut down to whoever was at the top. They were part of that group, and as long as the person at the top is not going to stand for that kind of culture, that's how you get change as well, isn't it?
Yeah, because
if
she
the
doesn't
person at
stand
the
for
top
the
is the same,
gossip.
how's
You've
it going to
never
filter
felt,
down?
yeah, you never feel like when you're walking along there, like the director's looking at you and she's been gossiping about you. Yeah, at the Toxic Trust, you just knew that those top wigs, you'd walk along and you
You're
just
mean.
knew they were, yeah, or like when she didn't like, because I wouldn't agree to do what she wanted to do to me, which was, she wanted to downband me or have me be watched on my shifts or have me stay as a 7 but never be in charge. This was all off chit chat of other stuff that I didn't even know what it was. And bearing in mind, it went to that after she couldn't get me on the TikTok stuff, so she just changed the thing. And then one day she came up, I was in charge of the delivery suite. She came up, she walked straight past me because she was in a piss that I hadn't done what she wanted. And she goes into the staff room and she gets the other band 7 and she's going, what's going on? Because you're supposed to like say it's busy, what's happening, it's a busy day. So it was like a communications thing. And I just stood in the staff room looking at both of them. And that one was too like scared, excuse me, to like say anything. And she was like enjoying, I think, feeling good because she liked her and stuff. And I just stood watching them and they just both ignored me the whole time. And I just thought, this is pathetic. Like, because even if you don't like me, swallow your bloody idiotic pride. Come and speak to me and say, hi, Lara, what's going on in the unit? That's it. We all don't like people, don't we?
That's what you're there for. You're all there to do the best you can for the women.
The other girl didn't even know the ins and outs because she wasn't in charge that day. So although she's good, I'm not claiming she's not good, although she was good, she didn't know the ins and outs that day. So she was actually creating a safety issue as well, but all just to make me feel like I was nothing. And it's like pathetic. I mean, the woman at the London one, she just wouldn't, I'm not just saying this, she would never have done that. Things weren't perfect there. It's the NHS still. They still had cliques and groups and stuff that formed, but she did her best to sort it out fairly. She never listened to one bit of gossip over the other. And in fact, a lot of them there, the matrons, had a thing where they knew the person that went in the office first to moan was the problem. They were literally like, we've always got a little bit of a worry. The first person that comes in, we know she's probably done something wrong and she's coming in to save her back. But they would always look at it fairly. Even if they thought that, they would get everybody in and say, what's your side of it? What's your side of it? What's going on? This can't go on.
When it's unfair and there's that mean and unkindness and this horrible culture we have going on, how can you do your job properly? Because as a human being with emotions ourselves, if someone's mean to us directly just before we go into care for a woman, how is that midwife then able to go, okay, switch it off like a robot and let's be completely happy and amazing and 100% concentrating on this woman's care? So not only are these midwives who are at the top who are scrutinizing your care, but then they're putting you in a vulnerable position where you can't do your job properly because they've just bullied you.
Exactly.
And mentally, your mentality is shifted, isn't it? That's the problem. And now your kind of mental health is kind of tied into what happened in the staff room. And sometimes you're kind of playing that back into the middle of your brain when really you should be really thinking about the woman that's in the room in front of you. It's hard to kind of to switch off sometimes, isn't it?
The vilest place to be. I'll never forget the day I was having one of the big meetings. I was helping deliver the producer of One Born Every Minute, weirdly, because I'd actually become friends with her. She asked for me. And I was in one of the rooms delivering.
Volumes in itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, so the producer of One Born. So I helped her deliver a baby, and I plastered this smile on my face because I had this big meeting with the director and the matron, and I knew it was just to discredit me again and just say all this stuff. And then I had to come back out of that meeting and go in the room and be like, "Hi, yeah, everything's fine." When really I just felt like I was being abused. I was literally like, it was like, do you know what? I hate to say this, but being a midwife at present in the NHS is like being in a toxic narcissistic relationship where the laughs are brilliant, the sex is fantastic, but actually the rest of it is abusive and horrendous and actually soul destroying. And you know, being a midwife, being with the women, they're not the problem. For me, the women weren't the problem. Although after my experience, I want protection from it because I want to know moving forward that the truth is there if I need it. But they were never the problem for me, the women. It was the staff, and it was horrendous. And the better you were and the more good you were, the more you were hated. And then the trouble was, the good, competent ones loved you. Like the doctors would come in, the great ones, they'd be like, oh my God, it's you, brilliant, great, let's go, let's have a good day. And the midwives that were good liked you. If you've got a cult type thing that forms, because remember, these girls set up a Mean Girls group against myself. It wasn't just, they had a WhatsApp. And the reason I found out about it was one of the girls that was on the group I was friends with for years. And she went to me, Laura, come and have a look at this. And she got her phone out and she was scrolling, and she must have gone in, she was slightly older. She must have gone in to the Lara group in her mind. She's scrolling through, bearing in mind, and it's my TikToks after my TikToks with loads of chats. And I knew it must have been awful because nobody agreed with it and nobody ever said anything to me about my TikToks. So she then came out of it and just went into something else, whatever she was going to show me. And I never said another word. And then just before I left, I quizzed her on it and said, why are you on it? Like, you're really nice. Why are you on it? She was like, well, you know, we don't like your TikToks. Why are you doing them if you don't want people to talk about them? And I was like, I get you're going to talk about it. I said, but why can't you do what like normal people do and ring their mate and go, did you see she was a bit of a dick today on that thing? We all do it, right? But I think when you do that as like a one-off call to your mate, that's not bullying.
Cruel. That is bullying.
Because you're like behind closed doors, you phone your mate and you're like, what a load of shit, right?
Yeah.
But you haven't actually gone out of your way to make a group and a talk. Then some weeks later, somebody contacted me on TikTok and said, please don't say who I am, but one of the girls on the group comes to our school and she's bragging about the fact that she's in this group slagging you off because they all hate you, and it's called the Mean Girls. And that was how I found out, because of TikTok.
They label themselves as mean, they know it's mean.
But that girl went into the matron and said, I'm not being held responsible for Lara's death if she kills herself because she's told me she nearly took her own life. That's making me give me a headache, this line. She said, she went into the matron and said, I'm not being responsible if Lara takes her own life. But the matron never said to her, well, that group's disgusting. The matron turned around and said, because I know the girl who was in there at the same time, said to her, don't worry, she's leaving soon. Like,
don't worry, she's leaving.
What in the hell? I mean, you can't even at school.
It's all right. Yeah.
Imagine if that was your child at school and there was a group against them. I mean, those kids would be expelled in the modern world. They'd be like,
these are like going back to who's at the top, because that matron or that person in charge is condoning that behaviour. Don't worry about it because she's leaving soon, so it's irrelevant what she does to herself.
Yeah.
But you know what's scary? These are the women who are looking after women on the most important in the most important times of their life, meant to be supporting a woman.
Well, that is what's really scary and sad about it.
And you want that teamwork to be there. You know, you want them to feel as though they've got your back. If you need them to pull that call bell, they're going to be like, "Here we go, I'll come help you." Scream and shout, they'll be there. And to hear this, to be honest with you, it scares me, but also doesn't shock me, because even the toxic world that I kind of came from, because I worked in general practice and worked in mental health, and one of the situations when I was in mental health and it kind of really forced me to leave was I was being bullied. My manager saw that I was being bullied. Her manager saw that I was being bullied. There was witnesses, all this kind of stuff was happening. And I remember sitting with HR, and basically they said to me, we need to have 6 months worth of evidence before we can do against it. Even though there's been visible witnesses on different scenarios, you still need 6 months worth of it. And I said, what? So I have to pull up with this being bullied for 6 months in order to kind of get it to the next level? And they went, yes. And that's when I kind of decided I wanted to end my life. And I nearly did. The only thing that stopped me was the lorry missed.
Do you know what? That is absolutely devastating to hear, right? Because my inbox is full of people like us, where we all either there's people that have taken their own lives, so their friends and family message me, or people that wanted to take their own lives, and people with smashed lives. It's so wrong. I think it became criminal the minute they did the false allegations, and it was senior people doing those false allegations. And I know the Lucy Letby case brings so much controversy with it, and none of us know what went on.
No.
But I was lying in my bed at that time, and I was fearing for my own life because they'd forwarded these emails where they were chasing patients, trying to elicit complaints against myself. And I just thought, where does this end? And in my mind, I was going, well, somebody could just say something, because they could, couldn't they? If you're a patient and you've got like a senior midwife going, and we've got this midwife, and she's this and she's that and she's that, you think, shit, well, she was a bit rough with my VE, or she was a bit this, you just don't know. So I was literally panic attacking, blood pressure through the roof, like absolutely nearly dying. And I have to rate the director and head of midwifery at the London Trust. I probably would have killed myself without them, and obviously close friends, because I literally remember thinking, I don't want to be alive. I felt that unsafe. I felt like it could be me next, where they'll just go to any lengths, because during the allegation bit, when the first sort of allegations didn't stick, they then send in another load of allegations and say there's a second patient that's complained. And I'm like, what is this?
Where did this
Like,
come
I
from?
literally rang the NMC, panicking, like, I mean, the director said to me, at the end, you need to refer them to the NMC. And that's what I've done. And the NMC are looking into them and looking at doing a fitness to practice on them. And at the moment, I have no reason to believe that they won't do that in the correct way. And I have faith that they will do it correctly, and hopefully elicit the correct response that should happen to people that are in those positions that are willing to go that far to discredit somebody that maybe knows too much.
It's weird, isn't it? Because sometimes we feel like we've been treated like abused animals, and when you end up going to a manager that's really nice and supportive, you're kind of like, oh, hang on, whoa, what's going on here? You don't know how to take it, because you're not used to it. And I think at that moment, especially if you do something wrong, you instantly then have that fear. Oh, wait, that's it. I'm going to lose my pin. I'm going to do all this. It's this all going wrong. I'm going to lose my job. But I'm lucky that I've had managers who've been very supportive of me. And if I feel as though I've made a mistake, I go. They said you go and speak to them, and they're like, "No, we can sort this out. It's not as big as EastEnders drama that you're playing on in your head. It's just a little thing that we can sort out." And yeah, so it is. It's always that fear. I've always been told, and I believe this, that the good ones leave and the bad ones always stay, because how to play, know how to play the game and how to get away with it. And funnily enough, the people who are bullying me are still there now, and the good ones, I said, have all gone, which is sad, really, for the patients that that would benefit so much for their support and care.
What I struggle with is that when I likened it to the narcissistic thing, is because they're very clever. They chip away at you. They do little things in their comments, and the things they feed back have always got flecks of truth in them. Like whether I'm loud. Yes, I'm loud. So they'll feed it back. So then if you're empathetic and you want to be better, you take it on. But then what happens is you spend hours and weeks picking yourself apart, while all these really disastrous midwives that are dangerous or not very nice, they just carry on. They're getting promoted. They're going up the ranks. And you're there trying to do better, with the toxic ones going, you've done really good this week. You've really quietened yourself down. You've really knocked a load of edges off. You're doing really well. And you're there like, thanks. When really, they're freaking shit. And you should be going, hang on a minute, you should be learning from me, not the other way round. But because you're able to consistently take yourself apart, because that's a good thing, that's how you get better. Because you're not always perfect. So you have to be able to say, if you say to me, Lara, the way you said that, you were like this, I have to be able to take that on board to be good. If I don't, I'm not good. So I was literally pulling myself apart left, right and centre, because some of the things they said held value. And I thought, you're right, I am really loud. Yeah, I probably do come across a bit aggressive, or I do come across that. Maybe I do need to tailor that. Maybe they do feel they can't come to me. When actually I started speaking to the staff and they were like crying, going, we've put in 20 complaints about this other senior band 7. Nothing's happening. Why are they doing it to you? So then you'd start going, well, maybe I'm not the problem. It was just terrible.
Story, isn't that what happened?
I've heard that the clan there is still really bad, if not worse. I've heard that that's really bad now, that toxic trust where I was. I mean, they knew it was bad anyway, but apparently that group of girls have just taken hold. And I tell you what, that group of girls couldn't deliver for bloody Amazon.
This is about the future of midwifery. So, what changes do you envision for the future of midwifery, especially in terms of integrating technology, in terms of, social media into practice?
I'm hoping that they will find their balls and start using social media, getting their midwives. It'll be great for the staff that are good at creative stuff, because there's many of us, It's not just me, there's many of us that are so good creatively, and it'll be so good to be able to offer like a postnatal discharge chat that is videos that you just log on to TikTok, on that hospital's TikTok or wherever, Instagram, and you can look up all the videos like cord care, breastfeeding, all those things. I just think it all needs to be integrated in. clan where it can only be a certain way, and they genuinely believe what women want, but they don't ever audit whether women are happy with what they're giving them.
Exactly.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
So they think that I'm unprofessional and I'm crazy and I'm not right when the women absolutely love me, but they don't audit it. So they think that the women want a certain thing when the women don't.